to our memory of Psalm 62. And we're in verse 3 today, which says, "How long will all of you attack a man to batter him? Like a leaning wall, a tottering fence." You kind of note a big transition, I guess, in theme already. And that's because verses 3 and 4 explain the circumstances behind David's confident assertion in God as his salvation. He talks about his enemies and how they're attacking him and what's driven him to write the psalm as a whole. So there is a big transition here, even just in the way that the psalm sounds. And so there's a couple unique things I want to point out that should be helpful in making or remembering the distinctiveness of verse 3. One of them is that it's a question. David's asking how long, and it's the only question in the psalm. But not only is it the only question, but it's addressed to his enemies. David's saying, "How long will all of you, those who are attacking me, continue to attack me, to batter me?" And it's the only time that David turns his voice toward the enemies. He turns his voice some other places throughout the psalm, which are we'll get to a little bit later, but this is the only time that he addresses his opponents and the ones that are attacking him. So those two things are a little bit unique. And then the third thing that's pretty awesome in this verse is the contrast to verse 2. And it's because of what his enemies are trying to do. Right? His enemies are trying to batter him. And this is the word for slay or kill, bring down. They're trying to take him down how? Like a leaning wall would be brought down, or like a tottering fence would be brought down. And both of these things, as David would be describing them, are stone as well. So don't imagine like kind of a rickety wooden fence. No, imagine like a stone wall as a division barrier between property, or as a protective barrier to a city or something like that, taking down those stone walls. So what's amazing is if you look back to verse 2, the very things they're trying to do, they're trying to take his life, but God gives him life. They're trying to slay and kill, but God's his salvation. And they're trying to bring down this stone wall, but God is his rock and his fortress. What are they trying to do? Well, it's leaning, it's tottering. And instead, God, as his rock, salvation, and fortress, will not be greatly shaken. So everything that his opponents are trying to do negatively, God is for him positively. His salvation is not in his position. No, they're trying to take that away from him. It's not in his wealth. We've seen in Ecclesiastes, wealth is not a good thing to put your hope in because it can be gone in an instant. Instead, he's expressing that God is these things to him. And because of that fact, his enemies are doing something that's fruitless. It may be painful, but it won't be accomplished. They won't be able to bring him down in the way that they're trying to. So that's kind of what's happening in the verse thematically. But as far as memorization, there's a really helpful thing for at least the ESV translation because of the way that the syllables work out, actually. There's a lot of rhythm here. And so if we look at the first phrase, we're going to take apart the section. Okay, so there's how long. And then if you break the remainder of the phrase down, will all of you attack a man to batter him? So after the question, we have three short phrases that all have 4 syllables, and they flow together really well. How long will all of you attack a man to batter him? Just the rhythm is almost unavoidable. How long will all of you attack a man to batter him? And then in the second phrase, you can break that down into 2 sections that both have 5 syllables. It doesn't flow quite as well, and I think we might want to have a little bit different emphasis because of this leaning and tottering. Allow those 2 words, as you remember them, to kind of be like an onomatopoeia. You know, the way that you say the word describes the very definition of the word. So like a leaning wall, a tottering fence. And you can, again, use your imagination. Paint this picture vividly to just imagine the leaning wall just falls over, it totters over, it tumbles over. So kind of say, I'd encourage you anyways, if you want to remember the psalm vividly, to kind of say it in that way as well. And then last thing to encourage you, it as easy as the rhythm is to help you remember it, sometimes that rhythm, especially when it's sort of as fun to say as it is, we just want to remember the content of this verse, that the content of this verse is very frustrating. David's expressing frustration and pain because these people have targeted him and they're coming after him incessantly, seeking to bring him down and to destroy him. And so he's not writing this obviously as we're receiving it in just this cool rhythmic English line, will all of you attack a man to batter him? But he's actually crying out and expressing pain here. And so for those of you that can identify with this, can identify with circumstances and situations in which, whether because of people specifically or just circumstances, um, that in the middle of that assault, you can quiet your soul in the immovability of God as your refuge. And that's what David's doing here. So, in the fun even of memorizing it and memorizing it with your family or memorizing it with this rhythm, just remember that that's what's happening in the verse. So, today, verse 3, we're going to say 25 times, verse 2, 20 times, and verse 1, not 2, 15 times. You may not have to say it that many times because you may be memorizing it quicker than that, but I'll pray for you as you seek to hide God's word in your heart